The more and more noise I hear coming out of Colorado, the more and more I think it's time to press the panic button.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow so you don't miss out on a moment of any of our coverage. I have a Locked On Horned Frog crossover coming up tomorrow. I've got a TCU insider, another one coming on Friday. Dalton from PFF is going to be coming on Friday as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of talking ball. Of course, ESPN's Pete Souza will also be joining us as well. I wanted to talk about Colorado's what appears to be a culture problem. Right? I think they have some bad apples in this transfer portal class, and I think this season is on pace to be a disaster if things don't turn around. I do want to talk about what I think a loss will do to this team. I think jobs could be at stake, honestly, if Colorado loses to TCU. And then I'm going to just talk about TCU and talk about how they stack up to the Buffs and what they've been doing good at so far. So let's talk culture, right? Fitting for a guy that looks like me to talk about it. But ironically, I do think Colorado finds themselves with a culture problem. And I think this is Colorado's issues with their lack of leadership and players talking about how they lack leadership. The coach is talking about how they lack leadership is a prime example of trying to build a roster through the transfer portal and it not always working out, right? Last year, you built a roster through the transfer portal. It's complementary. You get the right guys, you get all the good apples, and you go 9-4. You're contending for a Big 12 title. This year, I'm not going to say there's bad apples in this group, but there's certainly guys who are not living up to their end of the bargain, right? There's certainly guys that Colorado spent money on that are not doing what the program hoped they would. And so now you're below 500 and you're in the toughest stretch of your schedule, and it looks like things are going to get even worse. So I wanted to discuss a very fitting quote, or I guess disturbing quote from Xavier Hill, the Memphis offensive line transfer. When speaking to the media today, and quote, he said, and this is about the leadership, quote, "The leadership on this team can definitely use some work. We lead by example in our room." I mean, what on earth, right? When you have a veteran guy like Xavier Hill, who I think is a fifth year, sixth year type of guy, talking about the lack of leadership, right? We've talked about Caden Salter growing as a leader, right? We're 5 games into the season, and the quarterback, the veteran quarterback, the fifth-year quarterback is still figuring out how to lead. And he's like, you know what? Them benching me 2 weeks ago really messed with me. And it's like, okay, interesting. Like, maybe, right? But then you have like a veteran player coming forward, and you have other players coming forward where it's like, hey, we don't have leaders. And then there's videos on Well Off Media of Alejandro Mata, the kicker, lecturing the team, right? Whenever you have a kicker lecturing the team, you know things are going to go bad. And I thought Jordan Dominic, great point he made yesterday, that when it comes to leadership in football, a guy like Jordan Seaton is a leader. We're not denying that, right? But when it comes to who guys gravitate towards the most, who have the most gravitas, right? It has to be a guy who's scoring touchdowns, right? Throwing the ball, catching the ball, intercepting passes, right? Nobody wants to be led by a guy in the trenches, right? It's just, those are not the sexy positions, if you will. Those are not the vocal positions. And then you see another sort of instance of like, oh, shoot, what's going on? When the wide receivers coach is telling Omarion Miller, hey, I hate all of the body language I'm seeing from this wide receiver room. Like, what on earth is going down in Boulder? And like I said, I think Colorado I thought this team had a lot of potential. I thought this team, by bringing in a lot of veterans, would really be able to take the next step. But then again, I don't think they're doing that, right? I think they're actually taking a step backwards. And this is going to be a really weird comparison, so bear with me. But first of all, you guys need to know, Colorado leads college football with 38 players in their final season of eligibility, which essentially means you have 38 dudes who are old, who have been there, who have done that, right? These are 38 guys who theoretically should have a lot of experience, who should have been battle tested. And I applauded them, right? I raved about the offensive line class that they brought in because a bunch of them had experience. I was really excited about some of the defensive line transfers that they brought in because they had a lot of experience. And some of them are playing well, others not so much. But at the end of the day, we look at this talent, this roster from a talent perspective, and I don't think it's where we all thought they'd be, right? They were being hyped up as like, although they don't have the star power of last year, it's a better, more complete roster than last year, right? Which had Shador and Travis, but that was such a front loaded or top heavy roster that this year was supposed to be more complete. Well, now I think we're basically halfway through year 3 of the Deion Sanders era. And I know a lot of people want to shoot down Deion Sanders. I think Deion Sanders is a great coach and a great motivator and has the potential to be, and when I say coach, I mean in terms of being the face of a program. I think there's a lot of things game management wise that he's not very good at, that he needs to improve at, that he can improve at. And I think there's an identity sort of lacking within his program, right? I think the identity sort of should be established before the year and should sort of be synonymous with your program. Like you should have an identity that sort of goes with everything that you're planning to do. And I don't think Colorado has that. I think they try to figure it out as they go. And it kind of reminds me of like college, if you will, where it's like those people. And I mean, it happens. Like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started college as a bio major. I wanted to be a doctor. And then I had my teacher who she went to Harvard and MIT. I had a meeting with her one time and she's like, "Are you sure you want to be a doctor?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she goes, "Okay, I think you should think about that." I was like, "Okay." So I'm like thinking about my life decisions. Like, what do I want to do? And so I figured out my passion was sports. So like I knew my passion was sports, but I committed to it. I committed to being a part of the media. And when I told her, I was like, "Hey, I think my passion and career choice is going to be sports media." And she was like, "That's great." She's like, "I don't think this is for you." But like, I figured out what my identity was. I figured out what my purpose was. I don't think Colorado like goes into the year with a plan. I think they just sort of wing it and hope for the best. And right now they're getting not the best. But to tie it into the transfer portal discussion is we've gotten mixed reviews on how the portal works. The first year Colorado uses the portal and it's just like, "Hey, we're going to bring in everybody. Everyone that has interest in Colorado, we're bringing them in." The second year, it was more pointed. It was more like, okay, we're not going to bring in everybody. We're going to bring in guys from bigger schools who have more experience. And then this year, it felt like there was an emphasis on Big Ten experience, SEC experience on the offensive line, and guys who are veterans. But it's always a crapshoot, right? And I hate to bring him up because of the off the field issues. And I can't think of a better example off the top of my head, but former Colorado coach Mel Tucker had a great year with the transfer portal one year, and then the next year, not so great, right? I think the transfer portal and heavily relying on it to be your team's saving grace, like Florida State, we could go back to them. That's probably a better example. Borderline playoff team 2 years ago. Then last year, they go 2-10. A lot of that was they brought in transfers that didn't pan out. This year, they bring in a few more transfers that panned out, and it's all about the structure, right? And I think Colorado, unfortunately, may have missed on their transfer portal class. All of this to say, right? I think when you bring in guys who are basically 1 year rentals, like it kind of reminds me like the NBA or the MLB, when you make a trade at the deadline, it's like, this guy's a rental. We're only going to have him for a few months. When the guys are coming to this program with the mindset of like, I'm here for the platform and the opportunity to progress my career, I think you get a team that lacks culture and leadership. And I think that's what Colorado has. And it's very disappointing because I thought this team had a lot of potential. I thought they could be a 7 to 8 win team. Right now, I'm looking at how they're playing, and I'm looking at their schedule, and I'm looking at a 5-win, maybe 6-win team. And it's very disappointing. Really, it is. And I think that if they lose games, they continue to lose games, it could get disastrous. It could get real bad. And we'll talk about that. But first, we're going to take a quick break. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Mazda. Let's talk about Mazda. If you aren't familiar with their game, you should be. Because over at Mazda, they craft cars for those who do more than simply move. You could feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can even make everyday drives feel like anything but smooth. You can make them feel like anything but everyday drives. They feel smooth. They got intuitive controls. So like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Monarch Money. If you want to save some money, Monarch Money is going to help you do that. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. Apologies for the late episode. Had some Wi-Fi issues. Go figure. So we are going live when I got the Wi-Fi back up, and I wanted to talk about what a loss can do for Colorado. I think my final prediction for this Colorado team was 7-5, and even that feels ambitious now, right? I'm not seeing it anymore. You just look at what the frequent problems are, and it's, you have a quarterback who I feel like he's lost his confidence. You have a quarterback in Caden Salter who he lost his confidence for sure because he was benched. But then I don't think he has a game plan when he has the ball in his hands, right? And clearly, based on what I've been hearing, he hasn't been handling business behind the scenes. You have a defense who is giving up 200 yards rushing per game. Not great, right? That's actually terrible, right? You have a defense that isn't really reliable because who knows what, right? Maybe they are bad at making adjustments. Maybe they misevaluated. But at the end of the day, teams are just running the ball down Colorado's throat. And it is not a pretty sight, right? I think, let me pull up the number here. Colorado ranks 123rd in the country in rush defense. They're giving up 197.2 yards per game. They are the worst. I mean, there's only two teams in the Power Four that have worse rushing defense than them, and both of them have fired their head coach, Oklahoma State and UCLA. So you have a struggling veteran quarterback that I don't know if he's really in the right headspace. You have a run defense that can't stop the run, couldn't stop a nosebleed. And then you also have a secondary that, I don't know, I thought they'd do better. But you just sort of look at where they're graded at according to PFF, and it's like, oh, that's kind of underwhelming, right? You just sort of expected a lot more from this team, or at least I think there was reason to, right? I think there was reasons to be like, yeah, this team has the potential. Like, it just comes down to this, and this. But you just look at what they are putting on the field, and I mean, it's not happening. It is simply not happening. I'm pulling up the cornerback grades right now over at PFF, and I'll tell you, it's not pretty. I could tell you that for sure, because you just sort of look at what Colorado is putting on the field, and it's like, okay, where's the good, right? Where's everything? Like, where is the talent? Like, where is all this hype? Where it's like, okay, we lost Travis Hunter, but now we have a guy in DJ McKinney who's a first round pick, or now we have a guy in Preston Hodge. But you look at where these guys grade. RJ Johnson, who hasn't really played that well or that much because he's been, I think, banged up, has the highest grade, 66.9. DJ McKinney, 63.5. Makari Vickers, 57.6. Preston Hodge, 55.9. And then Tion Parks, 49.9. Now you look at the rankings where they rank among corners. RJ Johnson ranks the highest out of all the corners in college football, or out of this team, on this team, and all the corners of college football, 375th. Then DJ McKinney's 515th. Vickers, 704. Hodge, 745, and then TR Parks 817. Right? You have a bunch of corners that this was like sort of tabbed as like a really good group, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's not happening. You also have a defense as a whole that simply cannot tackle, right? Colorado had their best tackling game surprisingly this past week, and they missed 5 tackles, but before that they were averaging 10 a game, 10 missed tackles a game. You have just missed transfers across the board. So a loss for Colorado could really send the season into a downward spiral. I think a loss can really let's just put it this way. If Colorado continues to lose and say it gets ugly, I think people will lose their jobs, right? I think certain coaches at certain position groups will lose their jobs. I think a coordinator may lose their job. Like, Colorado is in a very vulnerable state, because if there's any program in college football who cannot afford to sort of just go back and forth from like good to terrible, good to bad, whatever, it's Colorado, right? You are under the microscope. You are the team that everyone is watching. You are the team that everyone's ready to jump on, ready to criticize. So you cannot be this vulnerable. And I think there's a lot of problems, and I don't know how you fix them all. And quite frankly, I don't get paid to fix those problems, right? Those are the coaches' jobs, the general manager. I don't know. Like, I think Colorado, with a loss to TCU, and you put them at 2-4 on the year, and then you got to win out, or not win out, but I mean, you're at 2-4, then you have a matchup with Iowa State and Utah the next 2 weeks, and then you'd have to win your last 4 games, which features a top 25 matchup against Arizona State, and then a decent Arizona team. Like, this Colorado team right now, if you ask me, if I had to put my life savings on whether or not they make a bowl game, I would say no. I don't think it's in the cards right now, right? And I think a loss will really expose the flaws that this team is having internally. I think it'll expose the coaching issues that maybe need to be adjusted. I think a loss would pretty much seal, not the deal, because I'm not saying Deion Sanders is going to lose his job. That's far from what I'm saying. But he may have to make some changes, right? You may have to make some changes to how they evaluate talent. You may have to make some changes to how you coach these players. And you may have to make some changes as to sort of how you run your program, right? Because to go 9-4 and then sort of just lose all semblance of progress the next year with a roster that was repeatedly said to be the more talented roster, I don't really know how you bounce back from that without having to make internal changes, right? So hopefully they can turn it around. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little about them TCU Horned Frogs, but first, a quick break. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. My favorite part about FanDuel is it makes watching football even more exciting because you got a little something extra riding on the game. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Square. The episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots. They run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood, and these are the places that become an extension of home. So whether it's a little Mexican joint downtown that I love, or just a little bar downtown where you like to watch football, Square is the proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You could go to square.com/lockedoncollege and to learn more. Before you do, support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Welcome back. It's Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Again, apologies for the later episode. The Wi-Fi went down, and that is not ideal. Let's talk about TCU. What do we need to know about this Horned Frogs team? I think they're a very good team. I actually have them as I think at the beginning of the season, let me see where I projected them to finish. I was pretty high on TCU. I was higher on TCU than most people were. But I think I had them third. I think I had Texas Tech first. I had them fourth. So I had Texas Tech, ASU, K-State, TCU. So, I mean, my top 4 is looking pretty decent, not bad, right? And I was pretty high on TCU because I like Josh Hoover. Now, this TCU team, their rush defense ranks 55th in the country. They're giving up 130 yards per game. passing defense, right? And they struggle with running quarterbacks. We saw that last week with Sam Levitt. Passing offense is where I get the most concerned, right? I talked about Colorado's corners struggling. Well, guess what? TCU is one of the most prolific passing offenses in the country. 328 yards through the air per game, 13.5 yards per completion, 9.04 yards per attempt. And Josh Hoover is absolutely dealing. And he's probably playing his way into, I would say, round 2, maybe round 1 discussions for the NFL draft. Like, he's good, right? This TCU team can get to the quarterback. I really am confident in Colorado's, this is weird to say, but I'm confident in Colorado's offensive line because they've been, I feel like, really good. They're averaging the longest time to throw in college football, whereas TCU's offensive line, they rank 80th, tied for 80th in sacks allowed. So there's that. But let me get a sip of water real quick. Excuse me. Excuse me. No, I think this TCU team, Colorado's, I'll put it this way. Colorado's flaws have been exposed by teams with running quarterbacks, right? And teams who could run the ball, right? Colorado's giving up 200 yards of offense per game. Colorado's secondary was supposed to be their strength on that defense. And I am very concerned that Josh Hoover is just going to be spraying that thing all over the yard. I am concerned that Josh Hoover is just going to be like, oh, look, my guy over here is wide open. I'm going to huck it downfield. My guy over here, over the middle, over the crossing routes, open, right? I think Sonny Dykes really has an idea of how he wants to pick apart this Colorado offense, or excuse me, defense. And I'm far less confident in Colorado's corners than I was coming into the year. I thought that would be like the strength. I thought it would be like, oh, you know what? The corners will kind of mask the flaws that the rest of the defense has because it'll be so hard to throw against them. And that has not been the case at all. So I really am concerned for this Colorado team. I personally think that TCU wins this game. I think it'll be close because I think Colorado, it's like they have semblance of a good team, but they don't have all the pieces put together. I don't know when they're going to figure it out. I would love for them to prove me wrong and it be this week, but I'm not sure. I'm just not, right? You guys comment below. Are you sure that Colorado can win this game? Because TCU is going to be extra mad, right? Go back 2 years ago, TCU was talking all that mess, and they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to derail this fun little story that is Deion Sanders. And no, it ended up being like a cultural movement. But things have changed since then. And Colorado's in a really bad spot this year, I think. And so we'll just have to wait and see. But this TCU team, I expect them to air that thing out. I expect them to really try to get pressure on Caden Salter because Caden Salter, he's not comfortable in the pocket. I think Caden Salter would rather a pocket breakdown than sit in there and just go through his reads. And yeah, I feel like Colorado's vulnerable. So we'll see how that turns out. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, follow, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Hope all of you have a great and safe day.